Well, if you're one of the millions of people across this country that owns a credit card, you know the most important part of that is that big magnetic black strip on the back, and that's what makes that card work. Also supposed to protect you, but doesn't always work. Some of the cards already have small chips also embedded in them called EMV chips. They work a little differently than those traditional magnetic strips, and by this October of this year, all merchants will be required to accept them. And here to explain exactly what that means for all of us is consumer expert Claudia Lombana, here to talk about the EMV chip cards. First off, give people an idea exactly what this is and how does it function.
Absolutely. So EMV chip cards, and just to clarify, it's not mandatory for merchants, so not required per se, but I will explain to you why it's important for them to do it by October in just a second. So with EMV chip cards, the difference, as you mentioned, is from the mag stripe, we're going to a chip. On the front of the card, you'll see the chip, and in that chip is embedded all your personal information. So that's almost impossible to copy as opposed to the magnetic strip.
So a lot safer than the magnetic strip.
Much safer. And then every time you make a transaction, it's encrypted. So it adds an additional layer of security.
Now, this has been going on in Europe. It's been over in Asia for a long time, and much of Europe. Why has it taken so long to come to the United States?
You know, it's all about consumer adoption and the changes. In Europe, they adopted this very early. The credit card companies have all been working together to get EMV chip cards to the U.S., and they're finally starting to roll out. A lot of people are receiving them automatically, or you might be needing to call your credit card company, but if you call right now your credit card company, you can get the chip card.
And with all the hacking going on, this is something I'm sure a lot of consumers are happy to hear about. Can you break down in a tactical term how this will affect consumers and merchants?
Absolutely, and it does impact both. So for consumers, we are used to almost daily swiping our cards, right? We take the mag stripe, we go to make a payment, we swipe the card in the machine. The biggest difference for consumers will be now we're going to be inserting the card.
Okay.
For 3 to 5 seconds, you leave the card in there. The machine will prompt you to remove the card, you sign, and you are done with your transaction in a more secure way. Now, for merchants, it's going to mean that they have to upgrade their technology to accept the chip card so that it can be inserted. Now, that means hardware upgrades, the point of sale machines, and software. So there will be a cost associated with that, but companies, American Express, for example, they are offering an assistance program to small merchants, so really important small merchants, to help them pay for it. It's $100 they can get back once they upgrade, and that goes through the end of April for the small merchants.
Okay, with this little chip now, going to be safer with that versus the stripe in the past. So when things used to get broken into and hackers came in, oftentimes the banks would be liable for that, and that's what they would say. Who now, with these chips, would be liable?
And that's exactly what you were talking about with the October deadline. For the merchants, it's really important for them to realize that in October, something called the fraud liability shift will happen. The fraud liability shift means that if a merchant has not upgraded their technology to be EMV compliant and accept chip cards, they will now be liable. They potentially could be liable for those fraudulent transactions, not the credit card companies anymore. So really important for merchants to change over.
Real quickly, compared to the stripe, how much safer should we be now with these chips?
So the mag stripes are very easy to copy, and that's part of the reason that we're upgrading to this safer technology. Embedded chips, chip cards, almost impossible to make copies and counterfeits. 80% of the credit card fraud that we see are from counterfeit cards, not from stolen cards, always counterfeit, so 80% of that. So this is really addressing the bulk of that. In Europe, they've seen an increase in security of credit cards of 65%. Can't predict what it'll be in the U.S., but definitely a safer way to pay.
And that's because these little chips, they kind of alternate what they do. You can't replicate it.
Every transaction is encrypted, correct.
Got it. All right, Claudia Lombana, really appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Just so small merchants know, they can go to americanexpress.com/fightfraud to get the $100 back when they upgrade their technology.
Great insight. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
and we're looking forward to it as consumers. Mark Stroll, we know